Hello. Today is February 13th, 2017, and I'm going to read you an excerpt from an upcoming novel. I may take the main character who narrates this and put him later in the novel as well, but this is the first chapter he narrates, and he hasn't been in the novel until this point. It's really a standalone piece. I turned 6 shades of awful when I showed up at Rumpelstiltskin Rest Area Lodge and they were there. They'd asked me at Grandview if there was anything else in town and I'd said no. I wasn't supposed to say no. Daddy always said if they're not married but look normal, whatever normal is, not to let them just go. Say, you might get 10% cheaper just outside town. You know Rumpelstiltskin? I'd heard him tell Randy Couples they might have a chance at a room there. Uncle Tad always sealed the deal, though. He was smooth. Daddy wasn't so good at it. Uncle Tad would say, "I am so sorry," and pause. You could always see the frown on the couple's face, or at least the guy's face. Uncle Tad would seem stern. "I am so sorry," he would say again. The guy would usually say, as they started toward the door, "Well, it don't look empty here." Uncle Tad would say, "Well, looks ain't everything." And if the couple looked miffed but resigned, instead of pissed and menacing, Uncle Tad would take his glasses off and say, "We do have competition, but I'll say this for the competition. That's Rumpelstiltskin off exit 3 going west. You'll get 10% off." And what looked like a hangdog boy and his girlfriend's best friend would start looking happier, and they'd look at each other, and Tad would say, "You want me to call them? They might have something." And they'd be on their way. It wasn't until Daddy died that I learned that the Grandview, with its continental breakfast and nice swimming pool and color TV and Rotary Club meeting room awards nights, was a money pit. I was always so proud of that place. Mom looked so happy when the brochure people would take a picture of the pool at twilight with the tiki lamps and the ladies lounging on the fold-up chairs. We often got awards, and the Rotary Club itself would book our event room to give Mom and Daddy the award. I didn't even know we owned Rumpelstiltskin till Daddy died. Uncle Tad sometimes sent me there, starting when I was about 15, to man the desk, but he always made me think I was doing a favor for a friend of theirs. He told me Daddy shouldn't know I was moonlighting. It always amazed me that Daddy would just let me borrow the Lincoln, which I couldn't have legally driven till a year later, the same year he died, to get there. Of course, I thought he didn't know I was going there, but Tad said, "Tell him you're going to Jamie's basketball game and that it's important to me. Take the back route. Cops ain't going to stop you. You're a leading citizen." Daddy would seem to believe me when I said I just had to see my cousin's basketball game. Twice a month for a year, I was seeing these supposed basketball games, and Dad would jeopardize his own license by letting me borrow the car, which I always parked just behind Tad's other friend's shoe store, one parking lot over from Rumpelstiltskin's. Imagine you're a 15-year-old kid and you're getting behind the desk in a sour-smelling, dim hotel lobby with hardly even a sign outside, and old fat men with fedoras and cigar stubs coming through a back door every 15 minutes, and sometimes a wobbly woman anywhere from 16 to 60 pops in, and they go up the stairs and down the hall or down below and up again, and this is 6 hours straight except for a slow time from around 3:15 till 4 when you could hear a cat choke a mile away. And when Daddy died suddenly the day after my 16th birthday of a heart attack in that same place, I was on brand new familiar terms with Tad. Tad laid in quite a funeral for Daddy. I thought it was lavish because Mom and Daddy were famous in town and most of all respected, but it was Tad, obviously, signing the huge bill at the back of the funeral parlor almost for me to see, that made me realize Grandview wasn't the monster moneymaker in town. Mom and Daddy seemed to owe a lot to Tad. Tad was Mom's brother, if you were thinking he was Daddy's. No one really knew him. That is, everybody knew him, but it was this way. You didn't talk about him. He stopped in various places all through town, all the time, but mostly off exit 3, the pool hall for one. I thought he was just fond of the game, but when did I ever see him pick up a cue? And when he signed that funeral parlor bill that day, of the funeral, the day of the funeral, for me to see. As I was bringing in one more pot of flowers a little old lady down the street had sent, I knew somehow he had a power. He could have mailed the payment to the funeral parlor. When I got my permit, a couple of weeks after Daddy died, I inherited the car. The title was in my uncle's name. I said to Mom, which I will never forgive myself for saying, "Daddy didn't own the Lincoln?" "Of course it was your father's car," she said. And here's what I won't forgive, actually. I just had to say, "That's not the question." Tad owned the Lincoln before I did. At least he didn't say that this was my car. I screwed this up. Tad owned the Lincoln before I did. At least he didn't say, "This was my car." I simply saw his name on the title when Mom handed it to me. But I found out Tad owned Mom and Daddy's house. He owned the Grandview, their pride and joy. The funny thing is, I concluded he owned Rumpelstiltskin, but, well, he did not. He had to run it, though. He had to pay those cops not to bust the Rotarian with the 16-year-old girl, the guys who ran the card games in the basement, etc., etc., etc. Tad was always the guy to go to the precinct and bail out the drunks who fought in the parking lot. He always managed to hustle a homo out the door if he came back more than twice a year, but he did not own the place. I remember the time I was sent to room 3A with a towel and Lysol to clean up some of the usual viscous fluids when I heard loud pounding in the lobby. I was still in high school, but I'd gotten much bigger. I went down the steps and saw two big guys in suits pinning Tad against the wall. His charms weren't working on them. I don't know what got in me, because I was full of resentment toward my uncle by this time for being the man who cajoled my poor dead father into fronting his respectable ventures, but blood was blood. "Don't you guys have nothing better to do than humiliate the brother of the lady who runs the Grandview?" I said, and before they could look at me I added, "Which has the policeman's ball each year, and the weddings and the Rotary Club awards?" Why this stopped them, I really don't know. They could have hurt me, but I'd startled them. Maybe because I said, "I know your sister," to one of them. "The teacher," I added. Uncle Tad had the gall to rebuke me after the goons were gone. "You don't say that stuff to them," he said. I almost hit him, but a little sob of his got out. I left that little sleaze market that night, and I didn't stay much longer at the Grandview. But to get back to the beginning, I did go there one more time to retrieve a lady's purse. And as I've said, that's when I turned 6 shades of awful. A couple had shown up at the Grandview, which really was full on this particular night. They were a middle-aged couple, and I had to tell them we had no room. I'd stopped telling people to go to the Grandview to get the goddamn 10% off. I never wanted to send anybody there again, but she looked at me imploringly. They'd been driving for hours. They were lost and almost out of gas. I tried not to bury my head in my hands. I said, "There's a really unattractive place a couple of miles away. If you're really running out of gas, I know you are." I added that because she was murmuring an objection. Okay. "If you're really running out of gas, I know you are." I added that because she was murmuring an objection. "I'll drive you there. It's a terrible place, but I know they'll put you up." They said they had enough gas, and I told them I'd call ahead for them. I told Tad to take them for free, and he agreed. I was getting power over him. Anyway, this is the next night. The lady came back and said her purse was missing the next morning. She'd actually walked from Rumpelstiltskin to Grandview to tell me. The man with her was still there, but they were out of money and couldn't afford to drive the car to Grandview, and the clerk wasn't letting her use the phone. "What's he look like?" I said. I was out for blood. It sounded like Tad. Just as I was heading out the door to drive the lady back there, a young couple came in the door. I'd called my mother to see if she could cover the desk, and she was still walking over from our house at the back. The couple didn't look married to me, but that judgment meant nothing to me. That had been Daddy's policy, and this was 1965. The world was changing. She looked pregnant. "No room at the inn," I said, pissed off. "Hey," said the guy. The lady whose purse had most likely been stolen at Rumpelstiltskin had the door half open, waiting for me to come outside and drive her back there. "There really is no room here," I said. "Sorry." "We're married," he said. "And it's a good thing," I said. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Christ, I'm sorry," I said. "We are completely booked, and that bothers me. I was being sarcastic, and I'm sorry. I know you don't believe me." I don't sound sincere when I apologize, but he seemed to accept me at my word. They were turning to go when my mother came in. I nodded at her and slipped past. The Rumpelstiltskin lady was still holding the door. She let go and almost raced with me toward my Lincoln. I heard behind me, "Hey!" I turned. The guy with the pregnant girl was saying, "Is there any other place around?" I wanted to help him, but I had a policy. "Nothing," I said. "Nada." Our Lady of the Missing Purse got in the Lincoln with me, and we zipped down there. I parked right out front instead of in the lot 2 doors down behind the shoe store. "When we go in," I said, turning off the ignition, "you may see a round of fisticuffs. I'll get your purse back, or at least the money. How much was in it?" "It's not the money," she said. "It's my driver's license." "Right," I said. It only occurred to me later that if she'd walked to my hotel, she probably had nothing in her purse. I did have an idea, though. Stay in the car. No lady should ever have to step foot in this place. "But I stayed there last night. My husband's in there." "Look, I hate the place," I shouted. More quietly, I said, "It's a bad place. I'll bring your purse out." She said she'd wait, and I went in, leaving the cars with her. Blah. She said she'd wait, and I went in, leaving the keys with her. Trust is best gained with a collateral loan. "Race off if anybody comes for you." With that, I got out and went in. And who did I see right off the bat in front of Tad, the pregnant couple? "There was nothing in town, eh?" said a voice. It wasn't the man or the woman. It was Tad. "You turned them away?" "Of course." "You didn't send them here?" "Did my mother recommend this place?" I said to the couple. "Answer me," said my uncle. "Where's the purse?" I said. "What?" "Where's Mr. Johnson?" That was the husband of the lady whose purse was missing. "Why'd you turn this couple away?" said my uncle. "We have a respectable business." It was at this point that I started to stop feeling 6 shades of awful. I said, "Because I don't care if a couple isn't married. Unmarried couples are welcome at Rumpelstiltskin. To have their purses stolen, to be privy to the pimping, gambling, and mercenary shenanigans of the underworld. I don't know if I said this exactly, but I did call Uncle Tad a mobbed-up thug. I turned to the couple. "I wouldn't send a dog to this pound." It was at this point that a massive leather object flung from behind the desk landed at my feet. Tad hadn't thrown it. It had been lobbed from the floor behind the desk. I ran into Tad, who was at the side, and pushed him away. On the floor, in a little crouching position, was Mr. Johnson. Here it is, he said. "There," he pointed beyond the desk. "The purse?" I said. Uncle Tad was leaning against the wall breathlessly. "It is a respectable place," he said. I picked up the big tan purse and brought it outside. I got in the car. "I knew you wouldn't drive away," I said, "but you're not Mrs. Johnson, are you?" She looked away as I handed her the purse. "I met him last night," she said. "I didn't have any money in it." Uncle Tad had cornered him as he tried to sneak out with it at 3:45 a.m., and God bless my mobbed-up uncle. He wouldn't call the cops.